Hei Shinjo pondered in her heart. She had to work harder and cause more trouble. Naturally, the points would be deducted quickly. This way, she and the gigolo could be sent back to the Juntian kingdom. The middle-aged man continued, "I'm the chief instructor of the Juntian Academy. You can call me Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. There will be other instructors to teach you the lessons you need to learn. Now, the men and women will stand separately. I want to assign you a dormitory." The children stood in 2 rows obediently. Only Hei Shinjo stood foolishly in the boys' row. Her fingers were still clutching Di Baiming's clothes, as if she would not let go of him. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi frowned. "Number 19, what's wrong with you? Didn't you hear what this instructor said? Quickly stand on the girl's side." Hei Shinjo sobbed. I don't, I just want to be with my brother. We siblings will never be separated." Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's frown deepened. The children who were selected had gone through preliminary selection. How could such a noisy little girl be chosen? Hei Shinjo saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's gloomy expression and shouted in her heart, "Deduct points. Deduct points." It was best to deduct 100 points all at once. Instructor Lu said coldly, "Deduct 1 more point on the 19th. Now go to the girls' team immediately, or continue to deduct points." Hei Shinjo acted as if she did not hear him and hugged Di Baiming's waist tightly. "I don't care. I want separate from my brother anyway." Di Baiming was secretly pinched by Hei Shinjo, so he could only agree stiffly, "We siblings will not separate." The rest of the children gloated at the two of them. These two were really courting death. Even if they were not eliminated this time, they would still lose a lot of points. After a moment, Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said coldly, 10 points will be deducted for each of the 19th and 20th. After Instructor Lu Jiaoshi finished speaking, he did not force Yun Chujo to go to the girls' side. Instead, he began to allocate the dormitories. He calculated in his heart that the little girl would soon realize how inconvenient it was to be with a boy. Moreover, she was now a deviant, so the siblings would definitely be ostracized. When that time came, she would naturally give in. 10 people shared a dormitory. In Yun Chuji's dormitory, other than the siblings, the remaining 8 people were all boys. Coincidentally, all 8 of them were Xian Yuanzuo's group. The 8 of them exchanged glances. They had long disliked these 2 little ones. Previously, with Leader Zhang's protection, they were unable to teach them a lesson. Now that there was finally an opportunity, they would be taught a lesson. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said some things to take note of, and then let the children return to their respective rooms. Yun Chujo dragged Di Baiming and stayed in the courtyard for a while before entering the dormitory at a leisurely pace. The 8 people in the dormitory each occupied a bed, and the 2 beds at the entrance were piled with sundries. It was obvious that they wanted to make things difficult for Hei Shinjo and Di Baiming. One of the fatties said arrogantly, "Hey, you two will be responsible for serving us from now on. The water for washing our faces and feet is all your business. As for the place to sleep, just sleep on the floor. In this way, you and your sister will not be separated, ha ha ha." Pan, de N0, VE1. The other 7 boys also laughed strangely. They were generally 2 years older than Hei Shinjo, so they did not put the 2 little ones in their eyes at all. Di Baiming's little face was expressionless, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Hei Shinjo, on the other hand, began to giggle. She did not want to bully the little ones with the big ones, but since these brats were looking for death, she could not be blamed. Just use them to deduct points and get eliminated early. When the boys saw Yun Chujo smiling happily, they could not help but look at each other suspiciously. Could this little girl be a fool? Pan, de N0, V1. The little fatty curled his lips. Don't tell me you didn't understand what I just said. What are you smiling about? Yun Chujo smiled and took a few steps forward until she was in front of the little fatty. Then, she raised her little arm and jumped up to slap the little fatty twice. Although the little fatty had become smaller, his spiritual power had not decreased. Although he had only used less than 10% of his strength, he had still slapped the little fatty several times. The little fatty's face instantly swelled up like a pig's head. The little fatty was a little confused at the beginning. After he reacted, he scolded angrily, "Stupid girl, you dare to hit me?" Yun Chujo curled her lips. "I just hit you. Do you still want to fight back? Let me tell you, if you hit me, you will lose points. Anyway, I have already lost so many points. I don't care. Come on, hit me." The little fatty's raised hands suddenly stopped. Although he did not know the rules of the June Heaven Academy, he would definitely lose points in a fight. He could not ruin his future just because of a moment of anger. Seeing that the little fatty did not dare to fight back, Yun Chujo immediately took out a whip from her storage ring and swung it on the ground a few times. She said arrogantly, "Hurry up and empty the 2 beds in the innermost part, or I will not be polite. If anyone is not convinced, come and fight me." The 8 boys stared with their mouths agape at the little girl who was holding the whip. She was obviously not as tall as them, but she made them feel that this little thing was very scary. The boys who originally occupied the 2 beds looked at each other and gritted their teeth to vacate the beds. They thought to themselves that they would tell instructor Lu Jiaoxi about this little treasure bullying them the next day. At that time, they might even kick her out directly. Seeing that they had freed up the beds, Yun Chujo walked in with her short legs and held a certain someone's hand. This guy pointed at the boys with his whip and scolded, "Are you pigs? Don't you know how to clean up? Hurry up and clean up the house. Whoever is lazy, let's fight one-on-one." The boys looked at each other but no one moved. They thought to themselves, this little girl was just saying that. Did she really dare to be enemies with all of them? They were clearly too naive. Seeing that no one moved, Hei Shinjo raised her whip and lashed it at the boy closest to her. That little boy could not avoid Hei Xinjia's whip, and he was lashed until he cried out in pain. When the other children saw this, they immediately became terrified. One by one, they quickly began to clean up. They all had one hope in their hearts, and that was to tell instructor Lu Jiaoxi about this little girl's crimes the next day. By then, they would be free from the sea of bitterness. The children finally finished cleaning up, and Hei Shinjo occupied the only table in the room. Then, she held the whip and said to the children, "I'm hungry. Take out the delicious food that you brought. If anyone doesn't know what's good for them, I'll whip them." The corner of a certain respected figure's eye twitched violently. Stealing the children's food, could you be any more shameless? Those children looked at the whip in Yun Chujia's hand and weighed the bright future of joining the Li Hate Palace. They could only reluctantly take out some food and pass it to Hei Shinjo. Hei Shinjo immediately beamed as she called Di Baiming for dinner. This fellow was delighted. Tomorrow, these naughty children would go and complain, and then she and the gigolo would be kicked out. This was great. After dinner, the children went to bed to rest. If it weren't for Yun Chujo, this little devil with a black heart, they would definitely play around and rest. Now, they were afraid that Yun Chujo would find fault with them, so they were all very well behaved. Yun Chujo blinked her eyes and did not return to her own bed. Instead, she climbed onto Di Baiming's bed with both hands and feet. Di Baiming was too lazy to say anything because it would be useless to say anything. He allowed Hei Shinjo to reach out her evil claws and hug him. Hei Shinjo ravished a certain someone for a while. This guy leaned into the ear of a certain someone and whispered, "Prince Charming, do you like this kind of childhood sweetheart tone?" Di Baiming's cold little face suddenly turned red. He scolded coldly, "Go to sleep. If you talk again, go back to your own bed." Yun Chujo curled her lips and pinched a certain someone's arm. Only then did she yawn and fall asleep soundly. A certain someone covered the blanket that Yun Chujo had kicked away. In the darkness, he pondered for a long time before closing his eyes. The next day, before dawn, all the children in the room had already woken up. Especially the little fatty with a swollen face and the boy who had been whipped by Yun Chujo. They had finished washing up early. They wished that they could see instructor Lu Jiaoxi right away. They would expose Yun Chujia's evil deeds and then chase her out. Yun Chujio was awakened by the noise of the children. This fellow's anger from waking up immediately erupted. He said fiercely, "All of you shut the fuck up. If anyone disturbs my sleep, I'll kill him." Those children were stunned at first, and then they were furious beyond belief. This little girl was really too overbearing. However, her good days were about to come to an end. They only needed to endure for a little longer, and perseverance was victory. Finally, the sound of assembly came from outside. The children rushed out impatiently. Only Hei Shinjo was still lying lazily on the bed. If she was late, she would be deducted points, right? If that was the case, then she would be late. This guy blinked his eyes, hugged Di Baiming's neck and said slyly, "We haven't treated you for a long time. Come, little sister will treat you. Be good." While Di Baiming was in a daze, Yun Chujia's lips had already kissed him. He might as well just leave it at that. What if it was effective against the cold poison, right? At this moment, outside the house, the children had already lined up. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi glanced at the group and noticed that one group was missing 2 people. He could not help but frown. "Group 4, why are there 2 people missing?" When the little fatty heard Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's question, he immediately found his backbone. With a sobbing voice, he said, "Instructor Lu Jiaoshi, the ones who are missing are De Bao and Xiao Bao. That Xiao Bao beat me up for no reason last night and now he is late for bed. You have to make a decision for me." The boy who was whipped by Yun Chujio also stood up and echoed, "Instructor Lu Jiaoshi, that Xiao Bao even beat me with a whip. My back is still burning." Instructor Lu Jiaoshi had actually seen the little fatty's strange behavior just now, but he definitely did not expect that he was actually beaten by that little treasure. That little treasure was 2 to 3 years younger than the little fatty. How did she do it? She probably joined hands with that big treasure. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was really a little surprised. He originally thought that Big Treasure and Little Treasure would be ostracized and bullied by the other children, but he did not expect that she would instead bully others. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi looked at a guard standing at the side of the team and said, "Bring the 2 of them out." When the children of Group 4 saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's cold expression, they could not help but gloat. De Bao and Xiao Bao would definitely be eliminated. Even if they were not eliminated, they would still lose a lot of points. This was karma. The guard had just walked to the door of Yun Chujia's dormitory when the door was pushed open. Hei Xinjiu yawned as she held Di Baiming's hand and walked out. The 2 of them leisurely stood at the end of the 4th group as if nothing had happened. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi glanced at the 2 of them and said, "Those who are late on the 19th and 20th will be deducted 1 point each. Let's start eating breakfast now." When the little fatty saw that Instructor Lu did not mention the fact that Yun Chujio had beaten him up, he could not help but become anxious. "Instructor Lu, Xiao Bao beat me up. You have to help me make a decision." The boy who had been whipped also looked at Instructor Lu eagerly. Could it be that this Instructor Lu Jiaoshi had a bad memory? How could he forget in such a short time? Instructor Lu glanced at the 2 of them and then said coldly, "As long as no human lives are lost, you can do whatever you want." The little fatty was immediately stunned. The other children were also stunned by Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's words. As long as no human lives were lost, they could do whatever they wanted. Did this mean that they were being encouraged to prey on the weak and suppress their competitors so that they could win in the end? The one who was the most confused was naturally Hei Xinjiu. How could she play with them like this? She was too fucking perverted. Very quickly, the children came to their senses. Then, they looked at Yun Chujio and Di Baiming with malicious intentions. These 2 little things were undoubtedly the weakest. Moreover, they did not belong to one of the 2 factions. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with them. The little fatty and the others revealed a smug smile on their faces. They would have a good time tonight. They had to return all the humiliation they had suffered yesterday to them. After breakfast, the children gathered again. At this moment, a middle-aged man came in from outside the courtyard. He first greeted instructor Lu Jiaoxi and then said to the crowd, "I am instructor Yuan. Now, I will teach you a set of sword techniques to test your comprehension abilities." After instructor Yuan finished speaking, he summoned a treasured sword and demonstrated the sword techniques he wanted to teach them. The children originally thought that instructor Yuan would disassemble the sword techniques one by one to teach them, but unexpectedly, instructor Yuan said, "The test will be held tomorrow morning." After instructor Yuan finished speaking, he directly left the courtyard with instructor Deng. The children were instantly dumbfounded. They had been so engrossed in watching the show just now that they didn't pay much attention to what was going on with each move. Moreover, even if they watched it seriously, they wouldn't be able to remember it even if they watched it once. The children were all frowning. On the first day, they had already given them a show of strength. They could foresee that the assessment in the future would be more and more stringent. Hei Xinjiu curled her lips and directly pulled Di Biming back to the dormitory. She could not be bothered with the bullshit sword technique. Tomorrow, during the assessment, she would just randomly dance a few times. The other children were not as big-hearted as her. When they gathered together, they would recall and discuss one move after another. When everyone's moves were combined, although there were still some differences, it was still much better than 1.5 moves that one person could only remember. In the evening, the children returned to their dorms. The children from Group 4 looked at each other. Today was a great opportunity for revenge. They would teach those two little things a lesson later. The little fatty looked at Hei Xinjiu, who was sitting on the chair and eating a fruit. He said fiercely, "Stupid girl, you hit me yesterday. I didn't fight back because I was afraid of losing points." Before the little fatty could finish his words, Yun Chujiu threw the fruit core in her hand at his face. "If you want to fight, then fight. What are you talking about?" Yun Chujiu had thrown out quite a powerful fruit nucleus. The little fatty's already swollen face was hit by it, and he immediately cried out in pain. The rest of the children were clearly shocked by Yun Chujiu's valiant behavior. They had thought that the little girl would definitely be trembling in fear. After all, she had no advantage in any aspect. Who would have thought that she was even more arrogant than before? What right did she have? The children came back to their senses and started to encourage the little fatty. "Lu Dolly, what are you still standing there for? Come on. Are you afraid of this little girl?" The little fatty instantly pounced on Hei Xinjiu in a fluster. He was gnashing his teeth in hatred. He was a little tyrant in his family, but now, he had been bullied by a little girl several times. If she wasn't beaten to half-life today, her name wouldn't be Lu Dolly. Yun Chujiu wouldn't put a little brat in her eyes. The little fatty's actions were like slow motion in her eyes, and she could easily see the flaws in it. She only dodged slightly and avoided the little fatty's attack. Stretching out her short legs, the little fatty sadly lay on the ground. The little fatty's mind went blank for a moment. Who was he? Where was he? What was he doing? Pan DN0VE1 CM. He was actually beaten down by a little guy in one move? He was also a person who cared about his face. How could he survive in the future? Yun Chujiu kicked the little fatty. "Hey, aren't you going to fight? Get up." The little fatty got up with a red face and rushed towards Hei Xinjiu again. However, the outcome was still the same. He didn't even see how the little girl moved before he fell to the ground again. "Are you satisfied? Come again if you're not satisfied." "It just so happens that the baby had a little too much to eat for dinner," Hei Xinjiu said with a smile. The little fatty did not give up. He got up again and rushed towards Hei Xinjiu. Unfortunately, some things could not be achieved through hard work. After the little fatty was thrown 8 times, he fell to the ground and died. Yun Chujiu kicked him with the tip of her foot. "Hey, get up. Let's continue fighting." The little fatty did not say a word. Fuck, he only wanted to die first. He was too ashamed to face anyone. Yun Chujiu saw that the little fatty was pretending to be dead, so she did not continue to beat him. Instead, she looked at the other children. Those children were all silent in fear. They were not stupid. If the little fatty fell once or twice, it would be a coincidence. Fuck, he fell 8 times. What did this mean? It meant that this little girl was more powerful than them. Not to mention a one-on-one fight, even if they fought together, they might not be able to win. Moreover, the little girl's brother had not made a move, no matter how one looked at it, that little thing was more powerful than this little girl. Hei Shinjo glanced at them and then said with a smile, I don't eat people. Why are you so afraid? Tell me, which one of you still wants to fight the baby one-on-one? Those children shook their heads like rattledrums. What a joke. They did not want to be as miserable as Lu Dali. If they fought with her, they would only be tortured. Seeing this, Yun Chujo took out her whip and swung it on the ground a few times. Then, she said with a smile, it seems that you are convinced now. Those children nodded repeatedly. Even if they were not convinced, they did not dare to say it. Yun Chujo touched her chin and revealed a bright smile on her small face. Since you are convinced, you can call me your king from now on. Do you hear me? The king. What the hell is the king? Just as the children were in a daze, they heard the sound of whips cracking. They immediately stuttered, yes, the king. The corner of the eyes of a certain person with an indifferent expression twitched slightly. Was this little scoundrel addicted to bullying children? Could he still have some integrity? If such a scoundrel had his own children in the future, he would probably be the mother of a child. A certain man's thoughts suddenly stopped, and his face turned hot. He quickly crossed his legs to cultivate and stopped paying attention to Hei Xinjia's movements. Hei Shinjo asked the children to stand in 2 rows, then, she said with her hands behind her back, come. I'll teach you a song. The title of the song will be The King Sent Me to Patrol the Mountains. This song will be the group song for our 4th group in the future. Do you hear me? The children felt as if their hearts were going crazy. What the hell was this? However, when they looked at the little fatty who was sitting on the ground, and then at the whip in a certain Joe's hand, they immediately nodded without any backbone. Hei Shinjo nodded in satisfaction and began to teach the naughty children how to sing. When the children heard the lyrics, they were even more afraid. What did she mean by catching a monk for dinner? Was this little girl a cannibal? The more the children thought about it, the more scared they became. They forced themselves to sing a happy song with a sense of horror. Hei Shinjo did not care whether they were scared or not. After she had tortured them enough, this guy waved his claws and let them go. Then, he moved closer to a certain lord who was cultivating. He said with a smile, this king is going to bed. My beloved concubine, come with me. Hearing Yun Chujia's words, the children were all dumbfounded. This little pervert even flirted with their own elder brother. A certain someone ignored Hei Shinjo and continued to cultivate as if he had not heard her. Hei Shinjo pursed her lips and did not say anything else. Instead, she climbed into the bed and lay down on her side. Then, she reached out her claws and hugged a certain someone's waist, rubbing her little head against it. A moment later, a helpless look appeared on the face of a certain king. He had no choice but to give up his meditation and lie on the outside of the bed. Hei Shinjo immediately snuggled in the arms of a certain king and said happily, brother, what do you think of me as a king? The certain king was silent for a moment before he spat out 2 words indifferently, childish. Hei Shinjo pouted and said, how is it childish? I have 8 subordinates now. A certain person said coldly, what's the use of 8 useless people? The 8 people, they also wanted to keep their dignity, okay? What did he mean by, what's the use of 8 useless people? It turned out that this Debao was even more detestable than that little pervert. At least that little pervert had taken them as his subordinates. Hei Shinjo giggled. Brother, they are pretty good. The 8 of them suddenly felt a surge of warmth in their hearts. Although this little pervert was hateful, he was at least stronger than her brother. Just when they were inexplicably moved, they heard Hei Shinjo continue, "Sigh, the main thing is that I don't have any other choice. It'll be a good for nothing and make do with it. The 8 of them, fuck, can we feed our feelings to the dogs?" The next morning, the children washed up and left the dormitory one after another. The eyes of the other children in the dormitory flashed with schadenfreude. They felt that the 2 little things would definitely be beaten up badly. Therefore, all the children's gazes fell on the door of the 4th group's dormitory. Under everyone's gaze, with a creak, the door opened. Chapter 3476 made a few random gestures. Everyone was shocked to discover that the first person to come out was actually that little girl. She had her hands behind her back and was leisurely. There were no signs of being beaten at all. Immediately after, that little girl's elder brother walked out with an indifferent expression, followed by those 8 people. Each and every one of them was extremely well behaved. What was going on? Were they stupid? They had such a good opportunity last night, but they actually didn't take care of these 2 little things. During breakfast, Xian Yuanzhua called the 8 children to the side and asked in puzzlement, "You didn't take revenge last night?" The 8 people looked at each other, and the little fatty said in a low voice, "Ninth Prince, that little girl is very strange. We can't beat her." Xian Yuanzhua, what kind of joke was this? That little girl was only about 5 or 6 years old, but they actually couldn't beat her. A bunch of trash. Xian Yuanzhua was born into the imperial family. Although he was only 9 years old, he was ruthless. He was now on par with Deng Qianyuan, so he had to find something to establish his authority. Only then would he be able to win over the other party's people. The greater his power was, the greater the chance of him staying in the Li Hate Palace in the end. He looked at Hei Shinjo, who was receiving her breakfast, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. He lowered his voice and said, "Tonight, I will bring people to your dormitory. Tonight, no matter what, I will beat up those 2 little things and avenge you." The little fatty's face immediately paled. "Ninth Prince, this, let's forget about it. They are not in our way. Why must we target them?" He was most likely afraid of being beaten up. He vaguely felt that even if the 9th Prince brought people to help them, they might, most likely, 80% still not be able to defeat that little pervert. Xian Yuanzhua looked at him unhappily. "You're one of my people. Since you've been beaten up, I naturally have to help you vent your anger. There's no need to say more. At night, don't close the door. After the sky turns dark, it'll bring people over." The little fatty saw Xian Yuanzuo's gloomy expression and didn't dare to say anything. He unintentionally raised his head and saw that the little pervert was holding a bun in his hand. He was looking at Xian Yuanzhuo with a smile that made him shudder. The little fatty instantly felt bad. What was that little pervert smiling about? Could it be that he had guessed what they had said? If he had guessed it, why would she not only not be afraid, but also smile? Xian Yuanzhua did not notice the little fatty's strange behavior and directly brought his people over to pick up breakfast. After the children had eaten breakfast, they took advantage of Instructor Yuan's absence and began to demonstrate the sword techniques they had learned the day before. Only Hei Xinjiu and Di Baiming, the 2 little ones, sat leisurely on the small horse carriage and basked in the sun. Of course, a certain lord originally did not want to sit on the small horse carriage, but he could not withstand Hei Xinjiu's forceful pull and could only sit on the small horse carriage with a stiff face. When Instructor Yuan came, his gaze couldn't help but linger on the 2 small bodies for a moment, then he asked everyone to gather. After everyone gathered, they began the sword technique assessment in turn. Instructor Yuan's expression didn't show any emotions, nor did he make any comments. He just asked everyone to practice the sword technique in order. After a while, it was Hei Xinjiu's turn. Hei Xinjiu walked to the front, took out a sword from her storage ring, and started to draw randomly. The children sneered one after another. This little treasure would definitely lose points. She was simply drawing randomly. Hei Shinjo drew randomly a few times, and then said with a smile, Instructor Yuan, I didn't understand how you drew yesterday, so I just drew randomly a few times. Instructor Yuan didn't say anything. He asked her to go down and let Di Baiming come forward to practice his swordsmanship. Chapter 3477, Points deducted based on ability. Di Baiming was not as thick-skinned as Yun Chuzhou. He did not even step out. He only said coldly, I don't know how. The children were gloating even more. These two little things did not even step out. These two little things will definitely be deducted a lot of points. Based on this rate of deduction, these two little things will be eliminated very soon. Unexpectedly, Instructor Yuan still didn't say anything and let the other children continue practicing their swordsmanship. Finally, everyone finished practicing. Instructor Yuan glanced at everyone and said, except for number 19 and number 20, each person will lose 10 points. Everyone, Hei Shinjo, Di Baiming. Immediately, someone asked indignantly, Instructor Yuan, although the way we practiced might be a little different from what you taught us yesterday, De Bao and Xiao Bao were just randomly practicing. Why did we lose points instead? Instructor Yuan replied coldly, knowing is knowing. Not knowing is not knowing. Number 19 and number 20 at least have the courage to admit that they didn't learn the sword technique. They didn't mess it up like you did. A set of sword technique that was perfectly fine was ruined by you. Hei Shinjo felt as if she was cursing a dog in her heart. Fuck, this works. If she had known this would happen, she would have imitated those devilish children and made a few decent gestures. It wasn't easy for her to use her ability to deduct some points, and in the blink of an eye, she had returned to the same starting line. When the children heard Instructor Yuan's words, although they were still indignant, no one said anything. After all, a small arm couldn't twist a thigh, so they could only listen to the instructor's arrangements. The children originally thought that Instructor Yuan would continue to teach them the previous set of sword techniques, but they did not expect that Instructor Yuan would leave without saying anything. Fortunately, the head of the guards at the side said, You guys have lunch first. There will be a new instructor coming to teach you in the afternoon. Hei Shinjo ridiculed in her heart. What kind of trick was this? This was considered a test. There was a new instructor in the afternoon? Crazy. In the afternoon, there was indeed a new instructor. The new instructor was an old man. This old man was even more lazy. He directly threw a few types of herbs to each group and then left. The crowd did not understand and could only carefully observe the herbs thrown to them, in case they could not pass the test the next day. Yun Chuzhou originally planned to bring Di Baiming back to the dormitory, but the strange grass in her dantian was clamoring to eat those herbs. It was Guai Chao. Guai Chao was afraid of Di Baiming, so its clamor was restrained a lot. Yun Chuzhou saw that the strange grass was so interested, so she moved closer to the little fatty and the others who were holding the herbs. She stretched out her small claws and said, Give it to me, let this king see. King. Immediately, everyone looked at the little fatty and the others. The little fatty and the others' faces turned red. They felt the mockery and disdain from the other children, but they did not dare to disobey Yun Chuzhou. They could only hand the herbs to Hei Shinjo. Hei Shinjo looked at the herbs, then shamelessly put them into her storage ring. I'll take them into the house to have a good look. You guys go and look at the herbs from other groups. Fatty and the others were on the verge of tears. Other groups would never lend them the herbs. They were all eager to have a few less competitors. Hei Shinjo naturally did not care whether Fatty and the others were crying or not. This guy returned to the dormitory and took the few herbs to have a look. He swallowed them all, but he was afraid that he would attract trouble. This guy blinked his eyes and grabbed a few leaves to swallow. Although the Guai Chao was not satisfied, he did not dare to cause any more trouble. Chapter 3478. She was digging a hole for them during dinner. Yun Chuzhou returned the missing herb to the little fatty and the others. Although the little fatty realized that some of the leaves were missing, he did not dare to ask too much because his heart was currently in a mess. Xian Yuanzhua was going to bring people to deal with this little devil at night. Should he inform the others? The little fatty secretly gathered the other 7 people to discuss. The 8 of them did not have the same opinion. Some people felt that it was not bad to be able to borrow Xian Yuanzuo's hands to deal with those 2 little things. At the very least, they would be able to vent their anger. Some people were worried that if Xian Yuanzhua failed, then their lives would be in deep trouble in the future. After discussing for a long time, they still could not come to a conclusion. At this moment, they heard the little pervert in the dormitory call out to them, "Little ones, quickly come in. This king has something to announce." The little fatty and the others looked at each other and could only enter the dormitory nervously. The moment they entered the dormitory, they saw the little pervert sitting on a chair, swinging his 2 short legs and looking at them with a faint smile. Inexplicably, the hearts of the 8 people tightened. Could it be that this little pervert already knew? Yun Chuzhou glanced at the 8 people and said with a smile, "This king hates being betrayed the most." Once, a one-eyed wolf raised by this king bit this king. Do you know what happened to that one-eyed wolf? The little fatty and the others felt that Yun Chujia's smile was particularly scary. They subconsciously shook their heads and stuttered, "No, I don't know. It's nothing. It's just that the dinner that day was wolf stew," Yun Chuzhou said lightly. After Yun Chuzhou said that, she didn't say anything else. She just used her little meaty claws to slowly and rhythmically knock on the table. Her eyes were cold as she looked at the little fatty and the others. The little fatty and the others immediately understood that Yun Chuzhou was knocking on their heads. They could not help but break out in cold sweat. They really did not understand why the little thing in front of them would bring them such great fear. The little fatty was the first to be unable to hold on. He said with a trembling voice, Your Majesty, I'll say. The 9th prince is going to bring people over to beat you up tonight. But this has nothing to do with us. He said it himself. We tried to stop him, but we did not succeed. The other children also echoed him. Even the children who initially wanted to use Xian Yuanzuo's hand to teach Yun Chuzhou a lesson had turned against him. They all echoed the little fatty's words, wanting to get rid of themselves. Yun Chujia's little face revealed a trace of a cold smile. You say it quite nicely. Did you really not have any intention of letting Xian Yuanzhua avenge you at that time? A few of the children immediately revealed a panicked and guilty look. Yun Chuzhou saw the changes in their expressions one by one, then, she said indifferently, I'll give you a chance to prove your loyalty to me. As for whether you can seize it or not, it's up to you. The little fatty and the others immediately had a bad premonition in their hearts. They kept feeling that the little thing in front of them was digging a pit for them to jump into. Moreover, it was a bottomless pit. The little fatty asked with a trembling voice, What opportunity? Isn't Xian Yuanzhua going to bring some people over to beat me up later? Let's prepare some gifts for them so that their trip will not be in vain. You guys do this, do you hear me? Yun Chuzhou told them her idea. The little fatty and the others were so shocked that they almost sat on the ground. If they did as she said, they would have completely offended Xian Yuanzhua. However, if they did not do as she said, this little pervert would not spare them. What should they do? Chapter 3479 Beating people up. Yun Chuzhou did not urge them. She continued to knock on the table, putting invisible pressure on them. After a while, the little fatty gritted his teeth and said, Your Majesty, I will do as you say. The little fatty had thought it through. If it really did not work out, he would go and seek refuge with Deng Qianyuan. Xian Yuanzhua could not do anything to him. With the little fatty leading the way, the other children also agreed to Yun Chujia's arrangement and began to prepare a big gift for Xian Yuanzhua. When Yun Chuzhou saw that the little fatty and the others were getting busy, she looked at Di Baiming with a smug look on her face. Di Baiming curled his lips. This little rascal was able to have fun with a bunch of naughty children. There was really no one else. After about 2 hours, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Then, the door was kicked open. Xian Yuanzhua brought the 9 people in his group and barged into the dormitory. Xian Yuanzhua had originally planned to work with the little fatty and the others to give that little thing a good beating after barging in. This way, the news of him sticking up for his subordinates would spread, and Deng Qianyuan's people might join him. He had thought it through quite well, but who would have thought that they would be tripped by a few ropes as soon as they charged into the dormitory? Then, their heads would be covered by gunny sacks, and they would be beaten up without any explanation. They did not have the slightest bit of alertness. In addition, it was dark at night, and the space in the room was limited, so they were beaten up by the little fatty and the others. At first, the little fatty and the others were a little scared, but later they realized that it did not seem to be a big deal. Since they had already made their move, they did not have any scruples. Moreover, they had been bullied by He Xinjiu for the past 2 days, so they vented their anger on Xian Yuanzhua and the others. In an instant, the 4 groups of dormitories were filled with wails and howls, causing the other dormitories to come over and watch. However, the space in the dormitories was limited, so everyone could only squeeze through the door and look inside. Yun Chuzhou felt that the beating was almost over, so she asked Fatty and the others to stop. Then, she walked up to Xian Yuanzhua with the whip in her hand and gave him a hard whip. She said, "I heard that you want to pretend to be a garlic clove to take care of this king. You really are an idiot. How could my people betray me?" Xian Yuanzuo's face was bruised and swollen from the beating. He glared fiercely at Yun Chuzhou, then used an even colder gaze to look at the little fatty and the others. "You actually treat me like this? Just you wait." The little fatty and the others could not help but feel some lingering fear. Xian Yuanzhua was the 9th prince of the Jun Tian kingdom. If they were chosen by the Li Hate Palace, it would be fine. But if they were not chosen, Xian Yuanzhua would definitely take revenge on them and their family clans. Yun Chuzhou glanced at Fatty and the others, then at Xian Yuanzhua. Who doesn't know how to boast? This king is not someone who is scared. I have already beaten up enough today. Get lost. Xian Yuanzhua coldly glanced at Yun Chuzhou, Fatty, and the others, then was carried away by a few children. Soon, the surrounding children also dispersed. Yun Chuzhou looked at Fatty and the others and said indifferently, "Close the door. This king has something to say to you." The little fatty rolled and crawled as he closed the door. With a sobbing tone, he said, "Your Majesty, what should we do? If we are not chosen by the Li Hate Palace, the 9th prince will definitely take revenge on us." Yun Chuzhou glanced at him indifferently. She said faintly, "What are you afraid of? The law does not punish the masses. Can't we just make everyone his enemy? Of course, there is still a once-and-for-all method. That is to kill him. Which method do you choose?" Chapter 3480 Picking Herbs. The little fatty and the others were so frightened by He Xinjiu's words that they almost sat on the ground. Although they had been cultivating since they were young, they had only killed some demonic beasts at most. How could they have killed anyone? This little pervert wanted to kill Xian Yuanzhua right away. He had scared them to death, all right? After a long while, the little fatty swallowed his saliva and said with a trembling voice, It's better to choose the first method. However, how can we make everyone his enemy? It's fine with Deng Qianyuan's people. They are not enemies to begin with, but there are still dozens of people who are the 9th prince's followers. How can we make them the 9th prince's enemies? Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes. Can't we just make them my subordinates? When the time comes, let them beat up Xian Yuanzhua, and Xian Yuanzhua will naturally hate them. The little fatty and the others looked at Yun Chuzhou in a daze. Wasn't this little pervert a little too arrogant? She actually wanted to make those dozens of people her subordinates. How could she do that? Yun Chuzhou did not answer their questions. Instead, she waved her claws. This king is sleepy. Go to sleep. Although the little fatty and the others were terrified and confused, they did not dare to ask any more questions. They could only return to their beds to rest. The next morning, after the old man, Instructor Jing Jiaoxi, arrived, he threw a large basket of medicinal herbs to each group and asked them to pick out the same medicinal herbs that had been given to them the day before. When the children saw the large basket of medicinal herbs that all looked extremely similar, they were instantly dumbfounded. If there was sufficient time, they could carefully compare the medicinal herbs one by one with the samples in their hands. However, they only had half a minute's time. It was simply more difficult than ascending to the heavens to pick out all of them. Especially the little fatty and the others, who were holding the herbs whose leaves had been plucked, it was even harder to tell which one was the herb they were looking for. Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes. Of course, she didn't care if the points would be deducted, but seeing the expressions of the little fatty and the others who were about to cry, her conscience that had disappeared for a long time finally showed up. She scratched the wicker basket a few times, then took out a few herbs and threw them into the empty wicker basket at the side. She said carelessly, "Hurry up and pick, what are you waiting for? Look at me, I picked so many in such a short time." The little fatty and the others were about to cry. "Are you picking? It was purely a random grab, how could this work?" Although the few of them wanted to put the random grab Yunchujo made back into the wicker basket, they thought about the little pervert's whip and gave up on that idea. The few miserable children tried their best to rummage through the wicker basket, hoping to find a few more correct herbs. 15 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. The children looked at the wicker baskets of the other groups at the same time. When they saw that there were dozens of herbs in the fourth group's wicker basket, they could not help but twitch their lips. They must have picked them randomly, it was impossible to have so many correct herbs. When little fatty and the others saw that the herbs they picked were more than twice the number of other groups, they immediately looked at Hei Shinjo with resentment. They were really unlucky. How could they be in the same dormitory as such a little pervert? It was fine if they were bullied, but not only did they completely offend Ninth Prince, they would probably lose points again this time. Instructor Dang walked to the wicker basket of each group and inspected it, then brought the wicker basket of the fourth group to the front. The faces of little fatty and the others instantly turned pale. It was over. They were definitely going to be severely criticized. They were going to lose points. Chapter 3481 Killing People. Seeing this, Xian Yuanzhua revealed a ruthless expression. These people actually dared to help that smelly girl deal with him. As long as they were driven out of this place, he would think of a way to kill them in the future. The other children had gloating expressions on their faces. The fourth group would definitely lose points. The more points they lost, the better. This way, their competitors would be much fewer. Jing Jiaoshi glanced at everyone and said, "Except for the fourth group, everyone in the other groups will lose 10 points. Hei Shinjo was not surprised by this, but she did not expect it to be so ruthless. Lose 10 points directly. Fuck, if she had known this would happen, she would have chosen fewer correct herbs. Immediately, someone raised an objection. Jing Jiaoshi, why can't the fourth group lose points? Instructor Jing Jiaoshi said coldly, on what basis? On the basis that the fourth group has found more correct medicinal herbs than you. If you are not convinced, take these medicinal herbs back and pick them slowly. After Instructor Jing said these words, he did not care about the medicinal herbs and directly walked away. Yun Chujo was secretly amazed. Not to mention other things in the hateful palace, these instructors had a very good character. Yun Chujo kept all the herbs she had gathered into her storage ring. These herbs could be used to feed Go Weiba. Little Fatty and the others did not dare to say anything when they saw this. The main thing was that they had not recovered from their shock until now. They had actually gotten first place. The feeling of going from hell to paradise in an instant was simply dizzying. They had not picked out a few in total, and most of the herbs in the bamboo basket had been randomly plucked by their king. Could it be that those herbs were actually correct? The gazes the children used to look at the fourth group had some changes. Right now, the fourth group had the fewest points deducted, so it had clearly become the target of everyone's exclusion. This was especially so for Xian Yuanzhua. The gaze he used to look at Yun Chujo and the others was as if it had been tempered with poison. At this moment, an old man walked in from outside the door. The old man's body had a cold and gloomy aura. The children immediately quieted down and looked at the old man with some fear. The palace of hatred never accepts cowards. Today's assessment is very simple, and that is, to kill. The old man said coldly. The children immediately cried out in surprise. What did he mean by this? Was he actually asking them to kill? Yun Chujo cursed in her heart. The palace of hatred was indeed not a good place. There was actually such an assessment. It was truly freakish. The old man swept his gaze over everyone, and the children immediately quieted down. The old man clapped his hands, and 10 people were escorted in by guards. Those 10 people were all tied up and clearly did not have the slightest ability to resist. The old man coldly said, "If you all want to not lose points, then come forward and kill one of them. As you all have seen, there are only 10 people here, which means that only 10 of you have a chance. Let's begin now." Xian Yuanzuo's eyes revealed a ruthless determination. He had long ago killed a few disobedient servants in the imperial palace, so killing people was simply a piece of cake for him. He walked to the front, drew his treasured sword, and cleanly killed a person. Seeing Xian Yuanzuo's ruthlessness, the children couldn't help but cry out in surprise. The faces of the little fatty and the others were deathly pale. They really didn't dare to imagine how Xian Yuanzhuo would deal with them if they couldn't enter the Li Hate Palace. When Deng Qianyuan saw that Xian Yuanzhuo had killed a person, he gritted his teeth. If he did not dare to kill a person, his lackeys might seek refuge with Xian Yuanzhuo. Thus, he could only bite the bullet and kill a person with his eyes closed. Chapter 3482 followed this king to rob with Xian Yuanzhuo and Deng Qianyuan taking the lead. Another 8 slightly older children walked up and killed the remaining 8 people. The old man's expression did not change. He only ordered the guards in charge of recording to deduct 10 points from everyone except Xian Yuanzhuo, and then left. After the old man left, many children sat on the ground paralyzed. This was the first time they had seen a killing scene, so it was difficult for them to get used to it. Perhaps to give the children some time to recover, there were no other classes scheduled that day. The head of the guards let the children make their own arrangements. The little fatty and the others staggered back to the dormitory, their faces full of fear. They were really afraid that Xian Yuanzhuo would take revenge on them. Moreover, among the 8 children who had killed, several of them were from the same dormitory as Xian Yuanzhuo. They were also the people who had been beaten up by them. Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes. She had planned to play a little trick and take Xian Yuanzuo's lackeys as her own and then isolate Xian Yuanzhuo. But now, it seemed that Xian Yuanzhuo was cruel and merciless. It was best to kill him to avoid future trouble. However, this plan had to be planned more carefully. It was most suitable to kill someone by borrowing someone else's knife. That night, Hei Xinjiu waved her little paws and said, "Little ones, let's go and rob with this king." Rob? The little fatty and the others were dumbfounded. What was this little pervert trying to do? Why was he robbing them all of a sudden? Did he think that he had not caused enough trouble? However, they did not dare to disobey her, so they could only follow Hei Xinjiu out of the room. A certain someone did not intend to get involved, but when he saw Hei Xinjiu leaving with the others, he thought for a moment and decided to follow her. Hei Xinjiu kicked open the door of Xian Yuanzuo's dormitory, then whipped the ground a few times and said fiercely, "Hand over all the good stuff on you, or else I'll kill all of you." The little fatty and the others were about to cry. This little pervert actually wanted to rob Xian Yuanzhuo and the others. There were quite a few people who had killed people in this room. Wasn't he asking for a beating? Xian Yuanzhuo was first stunned when he saw Yun Chujiu and the others. Then, he laughed sinisterly. This wretched girl was really asking for death. Since she had delivered herself to his doorstep, then don't blame him for being ruthless. Since there was a rule against killing people, then he would cripple her limbs and dantian. He could use her to establish his authority. Just as Xian Yuanzhuo was thinking about it, he heard the little girl shout, "What are you all standing there for? Attack together!" If anyone doesn't attack, I will whip him. Hei Shinjo took the lead and whipped a child who had killed people today. The child was hit by the whip and a bloody scar appeared on his face. He could not help but become angry out of humiliation. He took out a treasured sword and fought with Yunchujo. You dare to use a sword? What a bitch. Little ones, he has already used a weapon, what are you waiting for? Use your weapons. Hei Shinjo shouted shamelessly. This guy did not even think about it. She was the one who had used the whip first, but now she was accusing the other party of using a weapon first. While the little fatty and the others were still hesitating, Xian Yuanzuo's followers summoned their weapons and rushed towards them. The dormitory was originally small, and now that they had used their weapons, it was instantly in chaos. Seeing that no one was going to deal with him, and seeing that Yun Chujo and that child were fighting so fiercely, a trace of viciousness flashed through Xian Yuanzuo's eyes. He raised the sword in his hand and stabbed it towards Yun Chuji's back. Chapter 3483, Swords stabbed into each other. A certain someone, who had been watching indifferently at the door, had a cold glint in his eyes. This person deserved to die. A certain someone did not make a move, because he knew that the little rascal would not bring people to rob for no reason. He definitely had a motive. Moreover, with Xian Yuanzuo's skills, it was impossible for him to hurt the little rascal. Just as a certain honored warrior was thinking, he heard two screams. Then, everyone in the room stared blankly at one spot. They saw that Xian Yuanzhua and his lackey had a sword stuck in their chests, and the hilts of the two swords were still held in each other's hands. The two of them still maintained their standing posture. Their eyes were filled with fear and anger as they fell to the ground in front of everyone's eyes. Oh my God! Someone died. I was scared to death. Hei Shinjo, who was stunned at the side, fell to the ground with a faint. The rest of the children finally regained their senses and cried out in fear. If it was just a fight, no one would care about it. However, this person had died, and one of the dead was a prince of the Jun Tian kingdom. This matter was going to blow up. When the guards heard the commotion, they rushed over. When they saw the two children stabbing each other with their swords, they were stunned. Did they die together? The leader of the guards began to interrogate them about what happened. Everyone told him everything. As for how Xian Yuanzhua and his lackey stabbed each other with their swords, they did not know. Because it was already chaotic and the dormitory was small, no one noticed what happened. However, a child in Xian Yuanzuo's dormitory said, at that time, Lu Hong was fighting with Xiao Bao. Maybe she knew what was going on. The leader immediately looked at Hei Shinjo, who had just woken up. Hei Shinjo said in shock, I was fighting with him at that time. Then, he stabbed at me. I dodged to the side, and then, I saw the two of them in such a state. The leader frowned. Could it be that Xian Yuanzhua was trying to sneak an attack on Xiao Bao from behind? He didn't expect Xiao Bao to dodge to the side, and he couldn't retract his attack in time, so he stabbed Lu Hong. Lu Hong couldn't retract his attack in time and stabbed him. He was not the only one who thought so. Almost everyone present thought so. Xian Yuanzhua had wanted to sneak an attack on Xiao Bao, but in the end, he and Lu Hong's lives were at stake. It was really a case of robbing the goose that laid the golden eggs. The little leader took out a voice transmission talisman and reported the news to Instructor Deng. Very soon, Instructor Deng rushed over. He inquired about the incident and then checked the two's wounds. He didn't find anything unusual, so he had people take the two bodies away and then let everyone return to their dormitories. The little fatty lay on the bed and suddenly sat up. His forehead was full of cold sweat. He suddenly remembered what the little pervert had said earlier. If he wanted to get rid of him once and for all, he had to kill Xian Yuanzhua. The reason why the two of them stabbed each other was not, could it be that the little pervert had set them up on purpose? When he thought about how Hei Shinjo had led them to rob for no reason and had taken out a whip to provoke them, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that everything had been planned by her. How could a 5-year-old girl have such meticulous thoughts? The little fatty was frightened but also a little impressed. He decided to follow that little pervert in the future. Anyway, he would not suffer any losses if he followed her. Moreover, Dabao had not made a move all this while. He always felt that Dabao was more powerful than Xiaobao, so it was definitely not bad for him to be the little pervert's sidekick. Chapter 3484, A certain person who was angry the next day, Instructor Deng announced the decision of punishment. Although fighting was not prohibited, someone had died last night. Even if they had not killed the person directly, they could not escape responsibility. As the leader, He Xinjiu was deducted 20 points, Fatty and the others were deducted 10 points, and Xian Yuanzuo's roommates were each deducted 5 points. Then, this matter came to an end. Yun Chuzhou once again realized that even a first-grade country did not have much status in the eyes of the Lihen Palace. Otherwise, if a prince of a first-grade country died, it would not have been settled so hastily. Perhaps it was because 2 people had died, but the following lessons were much more normal. It was nothing more than teaching the Lihen Palace's palace rules and some miscellaneous things. After Xian Yuanzuo's death, his followers had already become more active. They all wanted to replace him as the new leader and then compete with Deng Qianyuan. For a time, there were endless fights, but none of them provoked He Xinjiu and the other 4 groups. Yun Chuzhou couldn't be bothered with these things. If Xian Yuanzhua hadn't provoked her, she wouldn't have set him up to die. This fellow only had one goal now, and that was to stir up more trouble and deduct all the remaining points. However, the trees wanted to be quiet, but the wind would not stop. On this day, He Xinjiu was secretly teasing a certain lord. The little fatty and the others ran back to the dormitory with bruises on their faces. Immediately after, the dormitory door was kicked open and a boy who was obviously taller than the other children walked in with his men. Little treasure, now that the 9th prince is dead, I, Liao Yuan, am the new leader. Do you 4 groups want to submit to us or do you want to submit to Deng Qianyuan? Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes. This guy was about to kiss a certain someone just now. Now that he was disturbed by these people, the unknown fire in her heart immediately burned up. She said coldly, "Get out." Liao Yuan and his followers were stunned at first, and then they became angry out of embarrassment. This little thing really took themselves too seriously. He really deserved a beating. Liao Yuan took a few steps and raised his leg to kick He Xinjiu. Before He Xinjiu could move, Liao Yuan flew out like a kite with a broken string, knocking down a few of his followers. Yun Chuzhou looked at the expressionless man in surprise. She was puzzled. The gigolo usually did not participate in these things. Why did he change his attitude today? The man looked coldly at Liao Yuan who was staggering up. For some reason, he did not like this Liao Yuan. He would not admit that it was because Liao Yuan interrupted Yun Chuzhou's treatment. Liao Yuan was so unlucky that he did not even know who had kicked him. He thought that it was Yun Chuzhou who had done it, so he was a little afraid. This stupid girl was really fast, but it was also because he was not prepared. He had to get back at her, or else he would lose his position as the leader. Thinking of this, Liao Yuan pounced on He Xinjiu again, and was sent flying by a certain someone. If it was not because he did not want to cause trouble, he would have slapped him to death. This time, not only did Liao Yuan see it clearly, but the other children also saw it clearly. This Dabao was usually quiet, but they did not expect him to be so powerful. Everyone immediately had the intention to retreat. They did not want to be abused, so they all stepped back and wanted to leave. He Xinjiu sneered and whipped the ground a few times. You want to leave? Those who beat me up will be beaten up for nothing. Either let me whip you a few times, or obediently submit to me. Chapter 3485 was impatient to play. Liao Yuan shouted fiercely, "Little treasure, don't go too far. Although your brother's skills are not bad, you are not a match for so many of us. Get lost. Did I ask you? I don't care if you want to submit to me. Other than this idiot, do you want to submit or not? Think about it, is there anyone more suitable than me? As long as you follow me, I promise to lead you to kill Deng Qianyuan. He Xinjiu said with a smile. Most of the children thought that the kill Yun Chujiu said was to annex Deng Qianyuan's forces. Only little Fatty shivered. This little pervert was not going to kill Deng Qianyuan, right? The little fatty did not quite understand. What exactly did Deng Qianyuan do to provoke this little pervert? Although they had only been together for a few days, the little fatty finally understood that this little pervert was very lazy. If he did not take the initiative to provoke her, she would not take the initiative to deal with him. He did not know that He Xinjiu had accidentally seen Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuan whispering together last night. She had not paid much attention to it. But looking at the situation today, he knew that everything that Liao Yuan had done was instigated by Deng Qianyuan. Since Deng Qianyuan was seeking his own death, she would fulfill his wish. Most of those children were originally fence-sitters. It didn't matter who was the leader. In any case, whoever was stronger would submit to whoever was stronger. Now that Liao Yuan was no match for De Bao, he immediately submitted to He Xinjiu. Liao Yuan nearly fainted from anger. He had originally brought people to deal with that little thing, but now, all his subordinates had become that little thing's lackeys. It was simply infuriating. When a few of Liao Yuan's competitors saw that Liao Yuan had lost power, they immediately began to mock and ridicule him, directly pushing him out. Liao Yuan gnashed his teeth in hatred and immediately went to Deng Qianyuan to discuss countermeasures. Deng Qianyuan had originally thought that victory was within his grasp. As long as Liao Yuan subdued the people of the fourth group, he would indirectly control everyone. This way, the chances of him remaining in the Li Hate Palace would be very high. Who would have thought that not only did Liao Yuan fail to subdue the fourth group, but his subordinates also defected to that little treasure? He was truly a good-for-nothing. Deng Qianyuan's thoughts were much deeper than Xianyuan Zhua's. Otherwise, he would not have been able to recruit so many people. He comforted Liao Yuan, telling him not to act rashly. Unexpectedly, just as the two of them were talking, the dormitory door was kicked open and He Xinjiu walked in with a bunch of brats. Liao Yuan's competitors immediately cursed Liao Yuan for being a traitor and shameless. If it weren't for Yun Chujiu not saying anything, they would definitely go over and give Liao Yuan a good beating. Liao Yuan's face was pale. He never thought that these people would come over to eavesdrop. Yun Chujiu laughed coldly in her heart. No matter how deep these devilish children's thoughts were, they were just a bunch of idiots in front of her. Deng Qianyuan, on the other hand, was much calmer than Liao Yuan. He looked at Yun Chujiu and said, "Little treasure, what do you want? Don't tell me you want to fight with us. We have 2 more people than you. If we fight, you won't be able to gain any advantage." Yun Chujiu didn't have the patience to play any more tricks with these brats. She jumped forward and directly beat Deng Qianyuan up. Then, this guy stepped on Deng Qianyuan and directly asked his followers, "Do you want to submit to this king, or do you want to be beaten up by this king?" Chapter 3486 was finally eliminated. Those brats were shocked by He Xinjiu's valiant behavior. When they looked at Deng Qianyuan's swollen pig-like face, they immediately surrendered without any moral integrity. He Xinjiu nodded with satisfaction. Then, she brought her people to the other dormitories. Without much effort, she took all the children under her command. Yun Chujiu was not afraid of Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuanqi. After all, there were so many people watching them. This fellow returned to the dormitory and lay on the bed, pondering. It was not a good idea to continue like this. The East Phoenix country was without a leader. If she delayed for too long, her position as the female emperor might be taken away by others. However, how could she be eliminated quickly? It would be difficult to do so since she would lose points without causing trouble. A certain honored guest lying beside her had been waiting for her to continue treating his illness. Who would have thought that after waiting for so long, he would discover that He Xinjiu was asleep? A certain honored guest felt a little frustrated. The reason he gave himself was that the reason why he was so eager for the little rascal to treat his illness was so that he could recover his spiritual power as soon as possible. Yes, that was the reason. It was possible that He Xinjiu and Di Baiming had finally achieved their goals in the following period of assessment. They were frequently deducted points, and then both of them were eliminated. He Xinjiu was filled with joy. She thought that she would be able to leave the selection academy just like that. She did not expect to be told that, considering their safety, they would have to wait until the final 10 people were selected before they would be sent back to the Jun Tiantian kingdom. He Xinjiu held her breath. If she had known this would happen, she would have continued to play with the devilish brat. She waited and waited. After another 10 days, 10 people were finally selected. She did not expect that Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuan would be among them. Little Fatty and the others were all eliminated. Yun Chuzhou felt that as the king, she should comfort Little Fatty and the others. However, before she could say anything, Little Fatty and the others happily said, "King, this is great. We have all been eliminated. This way, you can lead us to play together in the future." He Xinjiu, did she lead these brats astray? In their eyes, playing with her was more important than entering the Li Hate Palace. However, when this fellow thought about it, these brats were not that old to begin with. They did not have the utilitarianism of an adult, so they were not that sad after being eliminated. Yun Chuzhou and these eliminated children were brought out of the selection academy and then boarded a flying spirit tool. Yun Chuzhou looked at the old man on the flying spirit tool and was slightly surprised. It was actually instructor Lu Jiaoxi who had asked them to kill. They were only escorting them back to the Jun Tiantian kingdom. Was there a need to send an instructor? Shouldn't he stay behind to continue the assessment of the students who had been selected? Instructor Lu Jiaoxi did not say much. He just told everyone not to play around and then left the cabin. Although Yun Chuzhou was a little surprised, she did not take it to heart. She brought her followers and sat in the cabin obediently. 2 days later, at night, while she was half asleep, Yun Chuzhou noticed that there seemed to be a smell in the cabin. Her heart was shocked. It was actually the soul-devouring powder. She could not help but frown. Could it be that instructor Lu Jiaoxi? What was he trying to do? Di Baiming had long woken up. He took out an antidote and swallowed it. Then, he exchanged a glance with Yun Chuzhou. The two of them lay back down as if nothing had happened. The next morning, when the children woke up, they were shocked to find that their spiritual power was gone. Even though some of them found that it was caused by the spirit-devouring powder, they could not open their storage rings to take the antidote because they did not have any spiritual power. Chapter 3487 Unsealing of a Good Item. The children were terrified. At this moment, the flying spirit tool landed on the ground. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi had a few guards chase the children off the flying spirit tool and then entered a valley. The children were not fools. They naturally felt that something was not right. Some of the children began to cry and wanted to leave by force. They did not expect to be killed by Instructor Lu. With that, the rest of the children immediately lost the courage to resist. They could only follow obediently forward. The children were brought to a cave and then locked in a huge cage. Instructor Lu waved his hand and ordered the guards to guard outside the cave. Then, he laughed coldly, "Little things, are you curious about why this old man captured you?" The children looked at Instructor Lu in terror. Even in their dreams, they had never imagined that things would turn out like this. Hadn't they agreed to send them back to the kingdom of June? Why had they been brought here? This old man wants to unseal a good item. It must be soaked in the blood of a virgin boy and a virgin girl. Moreover, it must be fresh blood. You are the most suitable candidates, Instructor Lu Jiaoxi said with a strange laugh. Some of the children trembled as they said, You can't do this. If we don't go back, our parents will find the Li Hate Palace and demand an explanation. Instructor Lu sneered, "Find the Li Hate Palace and demand an explanation? Not to mention you guys, even if that 9th prince died, wouldn't he die in vain?" When the time comes, this old man can just find an excuse to fool them. Who do you think will pursue this matter? Hearing what instructor Lu Jiaoxi said, the children could not help but wail in sorrow. They were really at a dead end now. They had truly experienced what despair was. He Xinjia's focus was on the good thing that instructor Lu Jiaoxi had said. What kind of ghost thing could only be unsealed with the blood of a boy and a girl? In the middle of the cave, there was a well-dug stone pit. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi carefully took out a jade box from his storage ring, and then took out a thumb-sized bone from it. He Xinjiu was shocked when she saw the bone. This bone was very similar to the one that Di Baiming found in the fallen god abyss. She couldn't help but look at Di Baiming beside her. He was still expressionless, but there were some waves in his eyes. This confirmed Yun Chujia's guess. Yun Chuzhou recalled what instructor Lu Jiaoxi said before. Could it be that the seal could only be broken with the blood of a boy and a girl? Was the piece in the gigolo's hand unsealed? Was it also unsealed in such a cruel way? Yun Chuzhou could not help but spit at herself when she thought of this. No matter how cold-blooded and heartless the gigolo was, he could not do such a heartless thing. It must be that instructor Lu Jiaoxi's nonsense. Instructor Lu placed the small bone into the stone pit with trembling hands. Then, he looked at the imprisoned child with a fanatical gaze for a while. This was the first time he was soaking in fresh blood, so he had to be careful. He had to choose 2 boys and girls with better aptitude. As he looked at them, his gaze fell on He Xinjiu and Di Baiming. This pair of little things were brother and sister, so it was best to soak the holy bone for the first time. He Xinjiu saw instructor Lu Jiaoxi's gaze looking at her, and she couldn't help but sneer in her heart. He was really courting death. She stuffed a few bottles of the antidote for the soul-devouring powder into the sleeves of the little fatty behind her. Although the little fatty was very surprised, he had been serving their king these past few days, so he had become more cautious. She immediately hid a few porcelain bottles in her sleeves. Chapter 3488 What kind of bone is this? Instructor Lu Jiaoxi walked to the side of the cage with a sinister smile. He took out the key to open the cage and directly took Yun Chuzhou and Di Baiming out. The rest of the children looked at instructor Lu Jiaoxi in horror, but they did not dare to go forward. They did not have any spiritual power now, so even if they tried to resist, it would be futile. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi locked the cage again and then looked at the 2 little ones. It's your honor to be chosen by me first. Come here, be obedient, and I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, I'll let you bleed out bit by bit. Yun Chujia's small face twitched, and she said with a trembling voice, but we don't want to die. Can't you soak it in chicken or duck blood? Lu Jiaoxi, cut the crap. It must be human blood, and it's the blood of a boy and a girl, said Lu Jiaoxi viciously. Lu Jiaoxi, even if we die, we have to die to understand, right? What kind of bone is this? Why does it have to be the blood of a boy and a girl? Could it be that you made a mistake? Yun Chujia's face was full of curiosity. Lu Jiaoxi reckoned that he didn't have the chance to show off normally, but when he heard Yun Chujia's question, he said proudly, "What do you know? This is a holy bone. As long as I soak it in your blood for 49 days, I will be able to refine it, and then my spiritual power will soar." Holy bone. What is a holy bone? Is this thing a human bone or a pig or a dog bone? Yun Chuzhou looked at the small bone and asked. What Yun Chuzhou didn't notice was that when she said this, the corner of the eye of a certain person beside her twitched violently, and his face turned a little ugly. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi said impatiently, "How would I know what kind of bone this is? Anyway, it's a holy bone. Let's cut the crap and start." Instructor Lu said and reached out to grab Yun Chuzhou. He felt that this little girl was more narrow-minded, so it was safer to kill her first. Unexpectedly, just as his hand was about to touch He Xinjiu ran away. She even shouted, "I'm only 5 years old, and I still have a lot of years to live. I don't want to die. If you want to soak that broken bone, just let your blood flow." Seeing that Yun Chuzhou still dared to escape, Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said viciously, "Stupid girl, you really don't know what's good for you. See how I'll deal with you when I catch you." "Really? Then come and catch me. If you can catch me, it'll be at your disposal." Hei Xinjiu put her hands on her waist and said provocatively. Instructor Liu's face revealed a contemptuous sneer. This little girl was really naive. Not to mention that she was already poisoned by the devouring spirit powder. Even if she was not poisoned, such a small thing was not his match. Instructor Lu thought as he chased after Hei Xinjiu. Hei Xinjiu blinked her eyes. When she saw that Di Baiming had already put away the bone, she ran even more happily. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi originally thought that he would be able to catch Hei Xinjiu in a few moves. Who would have thought that the little thing was so slippery that he could not even catch her even after running around the cave several times? Instructor Lu Jiaoshi could not help but become angry from embarrassment. He threatened, "Stupid girl, if you continue to run, don't blame me for not being polite. I can kill you with a slap and soak the holy bone in blood." Yun Chuzhou curled her lips. TSK, who doesn't know how to threaten people? "I'm warning you, if you don't stop, this king will kill you." Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was stunned at first and then laughed out loud. Clearly, he felt that Yun Chuzhou was overestimating herself. He said disdainfully, "With just you? Not to mention that you are already poisoned. Even if you are not poisoned, 100 of you are still not my match." Chapter 3489 is for this king. Yun Chuzhou looked at the arrogant instructor Lu Jiaoshi and revealed a brilliant smile. "Old bastard, you are quite good at bragging. Since you are so good, come and kill me." Instructor Lu Jiaoshi completely lost his patience and said fiercely, "Stupid girl, die." As Instructor Lu said that, he raised his hand and threw a palm at Hei Xinjiu. This palm was full of spiritual power, and the surrounding airflow was distorted. Instructor Lu was filled with the thought that the speed of this palm strike was extremely fast, and that damned girl would definitely not be able to dodge it this time. Who would have thought that the little girl would actually leap to the side with her short legs, forcefully dodging his palm strike? Instructor Lu was flustered and exasperated as he threw another palm strike at Hei Xinjiu, and was then dodged again. Just as he was about to throw another palm strike, a strong wind came from behind him. He hurriedly dodged, and then realized that De Bao was actually attacking him. Was he not poisoned? Di Baiming did not give him time to think. He raised his hand and an ice dragon lunged at Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. Instructor Lu blurted out in disbelief, "Materialization of spiritual power? Aren't you from Towering Sky Continent?" Di Baiming naturally did not answer him. Instead, he stepped up his attack. He knew that he was no match for Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. What he needed to do was to attract Instructor Liu's attention and let Hei Xinjiu save him. At this moment, Hei Xinjiu held a large kitchen knife and cut off the lock of the cage with a click. Then, she opened the door of the cage. The reason why Hei Xinjiu said so much nonsense just now was to stall for time and let the children in the cage take the antidote. "Little ones, give it to this king. Didn't that old guy say that even 100 of me are no match for him? Let's teach him a lesson now. Only by killing him will we be able to keep our lives. Therefore, if you have any good treasures, use them on me. Do you hear me?" Hei Xinjiu said sternly. Those children immediately rushed towards Instructor Lu Jiaoshi, who was fighting Di Baiming. They hated him to death. If not for their king being quick-witted, they would all die here. They had to kill him. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was shocked and angry. Weren't these children already poisoned? Why are they all fine now? What the hell is going on? The 5 guards outside the cave heard the noise and quickly ran into the cave. When they were halfway through the cave, they saw a big sack flying towards them. The 5 of them quickly dodged. The big sack fell to the ground, and the red powder inside flew in all directions. The 5 of them were choked to the point of tears and tears. Before the 5 of them could regain their senses, several bolts of lightning struck toward them. The 5 of them used their spiritual energy shields to defend themselves while rinsing their eyes with water. Finally, they saw a little girl standing in front of them. She was smiling as she hugged a black bird that was as fat as a ball and looked at them. The 5 of them saw a layer of red powder on the ground. Fuck, it was actually chili noodles. The 5 of them were furious. This little girl was too mean. The 5 of them did not have time to think. They removed their spiritual energy barriers and pounced on the little girl, trying to kill her. At this moment, the black bird that the little girl was holding shot a ball of flame at them. The 5 of them did not think much of it. Such flames were not a threat to them, so they did not dodge. The tunnel was narrow to begin with. The flame shot out by the little black bird immediately covered the 2 people at the front. Almost in an instant, the 2 of them turned into ashes. Xiao Hanyo and Xiao Hanyo looked at each other. Chapter 3490, Ice Block Talisman. Yunchujo sighed in her heart. Xiao Hei's fire of nirvana was indeed awesome. It was just a pity that after using it once, it would take a long time before it could be used again. It would be fine if it could be used anytime. The 3 guards at the back watched as their companions turned into ashes. They could not help but look at the ugly fat bird that Hei Shinjo was holding in fear. They could not care less about Instructor Lu who was inside. They turned around and ran out of the cave. They did not expect that after a few steps, one of their legs had sunk into a hole, the other 2 people's legs were also tightly bound by a few mycelium. The 3 of them were terrified. They could not care less about what was trapping them. They kept trying to break free and used wind blades to attack the thing that was binding them. Yunchujo secretly let Dehua out. 10,000-year-old single pig, attack. Kill them. This sentence worked every time. They didn't know what Dehua had experienced in the past. Anyway, after hearing this sentence, Dehua quickly turned dark and pounced on the 3 of them fiercely. The 3 of them were stunned when they saw Dehua. What the hell was this thing? Was it the materialization of spiritual power? How was that possible? The people of Towering Sky Continent had no way to master the materialization of spiritual power. However, the 3 of them quickly reacted and raised their spiritual power shields. Although they were trapped by the mycelium of Xiao Hei and Xiao Mogu, their spiritual power was much higher than Yunchuji's, therefore, Dehua's attack was blocked by their spiritual power shields. The 3 of them quickly got rid of Xiao Hei and Xiao Mogu's restraints and fought with Dehua. Yunchujo narrowed her eyes. If this continued, Dehua would definitely not be a match for the 3 of them. After all, her spiritual energy was much lower than theirs. She thought to herself that she could actually use the talisman. However, she was afraid that if she used the talisman and caused the cave to collapse, it would be self-defeating. As she thought about it, she suddenly slapped her thigh. She was so stupid. She could not use the exploding talisman, but she could use another talisman. She still had the ice block talisman. This kind of talisman could slow down the enemy's movements. It would be a waste not to use it. Thinking of this, she took out a thick stack of ice block talismans and threw it at the 3 of them. The 3 of them were focused on fighting with Dehua. When they saw Yunchujo throw a stack of talismans, they were shocked. However, they did not take it to heart. Such a thick stack of talismans was definitely not of high quality and should not have much effect on them. Therefore, the 3 of them did not try their best to avoid the talismans. A few of them landed on their bodies. The 3 of them suddenly slowed down. Even if it was only for a few seconds, it was enough to kill them. Dehua took this opportunity to smash his huge body directly at the 3 of them. Although the 3 of them managed to block the attack with their spiritual power shields, they had consumed a lot of spiritual power. They could only parry and could not fight back. Hei Shinjo was immediately delighted. The ice block talismans in her hands were thrown at the 3 of them as if they were free. The 3 of them felt as if their hearts were going to explode. Where did this stinky girl get so many ice block talismans? After 15 minutes, the three of them finally could not hold on any longer. They were all killed by De Hua. Yun Chujiu curled her lips. Just as she was about to return to the cave, she saw Instructor Lu Jiaoshi running towards her. It was obvious that he wanted to escape for his life. When Instructor Lu saw Yun Chujiu, he raised his hand in exasperation. This place was so narrow. Where else could she escape to? She was doomed. Chapter 3491 touched the naughty children. Hei Xinjiu looked at the disheveled Instructor Lu and curled the corners of her lips. First, she raised her spiritual energy barrier to defend against Instructor Liu's palm. Then, she threw a thick stack of ice block talismans at Instructor Lu. Instructor Lu was in a hurry to escape. Moreover, he was confident that Yun Chujiu did not throw any high-level talismans because it was impossible for a child to have so many high-level talismans. Therefore, he was miserable. Almost all the ice block talismans fell on his body, and his movements immediately slowed down. The children who were chasing after him swarmed up, and all kinds of spiritual weapons were thrown at Instructor Lu. Hei Xinjiu kept throwing ice block talismans at Instructor Liu's body, so that he had no way to fight back. After 15 minutes, Instructor Lu finally breathed his last reluctantly. He did not understand even before he died. How could the originally well-planned matter fail in the end? When the children saw that Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was killed, they immediately cheered up. Yun Chujiu did not find Di Baiming among the crowd. She was shocked and quickly separated the crowd to enter the cave. She saw Di Baiming sitting cross-legged on the ground. His face was pale and his lips were purple. It was obvious that the fight just now had triggered the cold poison. Yun Chujiu's heart ached, but she did not have any good ideas. Usually, she kissed him a lot, but that thing had learned its lesson and did not fall for it again. At this time, those devilish children had already dragged a few corpses into the cave. Then, they looked at Hei Xinjiu with admiration and gratitude. Yun Chujiu was a little touched when she saw the devilish children's expressions. However, there were still some things that needed to be done. She smiled and said, "You were drugged by the devouring spirit powder. Although you ate the antidote, it was inevitable that there were some residual toxins. Come, eat these pills." The devilish children were naturally not on guard against her. They took the pills and ate them. Then, they passed out miserably. Hei Xinjiu let out the Meng Yanshou. Then, she ordered, "Weave a dream for them and hide the matter of the bones. Tell them that Instructor Lu Jiaoshi is going to practice an evil technique. Also, hide the pretty boy's ice dragon and my big kitchen knife so as to avoid any trouble." Meng Yanshou immediately followed Hei Xinjiu's instructions and began to weave dreams for those devilish children. These devilish children did not have high spiritual power to begin with, and they were still in a deep sleep. Therefore, Meng Yanshou easily completed the task. 15 minutes later, the devilish children woke up one after another and rubbed their eyes. Why were they still asleep after eating the king's medicinal pills? Yun Chujiu said with a smile, "This king added some qi calming and spirit concentrating things into the pills. This can completely remove the spirit-devouring powder from your body. Do you feel much more comfortable now than before?" The naughty children naturally felt much more comfortable after a short nap. Therefore, they firmly believed Yun Chujiu's words and were all grateful to her. Hei Xinjiu rubbed her nose guiltily and coughed a few times. Then, she pointed at Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's corpse and said, "In the future, the Li Hate Palace might investigate Instructor Liu's whereabouts. Therefore, in order to avoid getting into trouble, after you return to the Jun Tian Kingdom, directly hand over this corpse to the Emperor and have him report the matter to the Li Hate Palace." The children were stunned for a moment. The little fatty was the first to react and asked, "Your Majesty, what do you mean by this? You want to separate from us?" Yun Chujiu smiled bitterly and pointed at Di Baiming who was meditating beside her. "As you can see, my brother's old illness is acting up, so I'm going to bring him to look for a famous doctor. I can't return to the country of June with you guys." Chapter 3492, Prime Minister Sima's voice transmission talisman. The children were very reluctant, but they could see that Yun Chujo could not change her mind. All of them were teary-eyed. Before this, they might have been a little perfunctory towards this king, but now, they really regarded this little girl as their king. The little fatty asked with a face full of reluctance, "King, then when your brother's illness is cured, will you still return to the Juntian kingdom to look for us?" Yun Chujo blinked her eyes. "That's hard to say. If there's a chance, I will definitely come to see you. You won't forget me, right?" Hearing Yun Chujio's words, the children expressed their loyalty one by one. Among them, the little fatty said the most exaggerated, "Your Majesty, you are our birth parents. If I forget you, Your Majesty, I will become a bastard in my next life." Hearing the children's words, Yun Chujio's eyes flashed with a faint light. "Good. In that case, when Your Majesty is in trouble in the future, you are not allowed to leave me in the lurch." The naughty children naturally agreed. Hei Shinjo thought for a moment and took out a piece of paper. "Come, all of you sign your names and leave a memento for me." Those naughty children did not know that the person in front of them was a little devil who ate people without spitting out their bones. They immediately signed their names without hesitation. Seeing that the naughty children signed their names without missing a single one, Hei Shinjo put away the piece of paper with a smile. Only then did she put away the piece of paper with a smile. "After you board the flying spiritual device, send a sound transmission talisman to your parents. I reckon that someone will come to pick you up very soon. The green mountains will not change, and the green waters will flow forever. We'll meet again in the future." Yun Chujo said as she hugged her chubby little fists. The devilish children left the cave while crying. They rode on the flying spiritual device that they had found from instructor Lu Jiax's storage ring and left. Only then did Yun Chujo turn her head to look at Di Baiming. After adjusting his breathing just now, although his face still looked a little pale, it was already better than before. "Prince Charming, it's not good to stay here for long. Let's leave too." Di Baiming nodded, stood up, and the two little ones left the cave. After getting on the flying spirit tool, Hei Shinjo immediately changed the appearance of herself and Di Baiming and turned them into 8-year-old children. In order to prevent Jun Tian Nation from searching for the people in the Yulan Valley, they deliberately made a detour to Hao Tian Nation, which was the neighboring country of Jun Tian Nation. Although they might have to take more unnecessary roads, at least it was safer. Although they encountered some twists and turns on the way, with Hei Xinjia's glib tongue and a belly full of evil tricks, the two of them finally arrived at the territory of East Phoenix Nation after half a month. Hei Shinjo was so excited that she almost cried. At that time, she had only helped Emperor Nan Xian to borrow the dragon to kill people. Who would have thought that she would be struck by lightning and meet Imo later on? Then, she tragically went to the capital of Star Sun Country, Starry Night City, and then to the Yulan Valley. However, it was a good thing that she found Ghost Face Orchid and refined the antidote for the rejuvenation pill. This could also be considered as opening up a new life-saving skill. Just as Hei Shinjo was sighing with emotion, she received a voice transmission talisman from Prime Minister Sima. When Yun Chujo heard the content of the voice transmission talisman, her face instantly darkened, and her eyes were filled with a fierce look. "What's wrong? What happened?" Di Baiming's voice carried a bit of concern that she herself did not notice. Star Sun Kingdom sent a team of people to escort Ling Tianche and Yun Xiyu to the border of the two countries. "Yes, it's the original Crown Prince and Princess Xiyu. They said that since I'm occupying the magpie's nest, the throne should be returned to Ling Tianche. If I don't agree, the Sun Nation will uphold justice and help Ling Tianche take back the throne." Chapter 3493, Miss Zhang's Territory, What do you plan to do? Di Baiming was a little annoyed. If it wasn't for the fact that his old illness had relapsed, he would have killed those people directly to prevent the little rascal from wasting his energy. Yun Chujo slightly curled the corners of her lips. The Star Sun Kingdom only wants those two good-for-nothings to be puppets, and then slowly encroach on our East Phoenix Kingdom. Since they dare to play dirty tricks, then this emperor will directly make the sky-high continent no longer have the Star-Sun Kingdom. Di Baiming looked at the proud expression on Yun Chujia's face, and his heart beat violently. Soon after, a wave of pain struck him, and he fainted. When Di Baiming woke up, he found himself lying on the bed. He looked around and found that he was still in the cabin. He reckoned that he should still be on the flying spirit tool. When he was looking around, he felt that something was not quite right. He lowered his head to look at his body, and it actually turned into the appearance of a 3- or 4-year-old. "Baby, you're awake." Yun Chujia's crisp voice came from the cabin door. Di Baiming looked up. Yun Chujio had already returned to her original appearance. She looked at him with a smile. Di Baiming was stunned for a while. Then, he remembered what Yun Chujio said just now. "Baby?" Was she calling him? "Baby, didn't you hear what little sister said? Why are you so naughty?" Hei Xinjiu walked to the bedside and poked Di Baiming's forehead with her fair finger. Di Baiming's body suddenly emitted a chill. The chill on his face seemed to have frozen into ice. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth, "Little Jiu, what do you want to do?" Yun Chujio poked a certain venerable's small face with her hand. "Baby, don't be angry. Your cold poison has acted up again. I can only make you smaller so that your symptoms can be alleviated. Heaven and earth, I'm doing this for your own good." Di Baiming looked at her with a cold smile. If she didn't laugh so hard, perhaps he would still believe her words. He gritted his teeth and said, "This venerable self can hold on. Give me the antidote." "That won't do. We are about to reach the palace. If I bring you in without changing your appearance and let people see that you are injured, there will definitely be trouble. If I bring you in after changing your appearance, those people will think that their female emperor is a fickle woman. Hence, you can only appear in the imperial palace in the form of this little bun. I can just make up an excuse to cover it up," Hei Xinjiu said with a straight face. Di Baiming naturally did not believe her words. However, his current spiritual power was much weaker than before and he was no match for Yun Chujio. Furthermore, his body had also become smaller. He could only take a few deep glances at Yun Chujio. He said coldly, "It's best if that's the case. Little Jiu, if you do anything out of line, this venerable self will teach you a lesson sooner or later." Yun Chujio agreed with a smile on her face. This fellow's mouth twitched in his heart. "Little fellow, today is the day you drink, today is the day you get drunk. When you come to the Little Miss territory, you will suffer." Under the arrangements of Prime Minister Sima and Yun Jichen, Yun Chujio sneaked back to the imperial palace without anyone noticing. Yun Chujio had long planned with Prime Minister Sima. After she went missing, Prime Minister Sima made up a story to fool Emperor Nan Xian before leading his men back to the capital of the East Phoenix country. After returning to the capital, he told the public that she was in closed-door cultivation, so he did not attend the morning court. However, it was a good thing that Hei Xinjiu was very lazy and rarely attended the morning court before, so she did not arouse any suspicion. When Prime Minister Sima saw that His Majesty had returned safely, he originally had a lot to say. However, when he saw the little boy held by His Majesty, he was instantly scared out of his wits. Chapter 3494, Yun Chujia's letter of credence. Prime Minister Sima looked at the cold and stern face of the little boy with a dumbfounded expression. Although his appearance was not very similar to that young Master Di from before, but this temperament was clearly the son of the young Master Di. Oh my God! This was the illegitimate child of their emperor. Ah Pui! What illegitimate child? This was the crown prince of their East Phoenix kingdom. Oh my God! Their emperor's secrecy work is really good. He even said that he had entered some place by mistake and was unable to escape. Could it be that he had gone to fetch his son? The more Prime Minister Sima thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. He solemnly said, "Your Majesty, since you have brought the crown prince back, do you want to publicly announce his identity?" Yun Chujio was drinking tea. When she heard Prime Minister Sima's words, the tea in her mouth immediately spurted out. Crown Prince? This old man couldn't possibly think that the gigolo was her son, right? Di Baiming's expression was even gloomier. What kind of master had what kind of slave? Could this old man be blind? Yun Chujo laughed so hard that she fell back and forth. However, when she saw Di Baiming's ashen face, she immediately held back her laughter and said, Prime Minister Sima, you have misunderstood. This is not my son. This is an orphan that I picked up by accident. I have taken him as my godbrother. Prime Minister Sima immediately said, Your Majesty, I understand all your difficulties. However, isn't it a difference in seniority to take him as my brother? It's better to take him as my godson. Yun Chujo was stunned at first. Then, she laughed so hard that she almost fell to the ground. She had decided to give old man Sima a raise. This old man was too cute. She was happy. The cold air on Di Baiming's body made Prime Minister Sima shiver. The old man was still lamenting in his heart. He was indeed young Master Di's son. This temperament and attitude were too similar. Yun Chujo finally stopped laughing and said, He really isn't my son. He really is my younger brother. It would be best if we could seal the news. However, just in case, you better make up a reasonable reason to prevent more trouble. Prime Minister Sima still felt that Yun Chujo was being stubborn. If this little boy was not the child of His Majesty and young Master Di, his old man would have lived in vain. Although Prime Minister Sima thought so in his heart, he still nodded and agreed. Then, he got down to business. Your Majesty, the envoys of the Xingsuan Kingdom are still waiting for news. How should we reply? Yun Chujia's giggling expression immediately turned cold. She sneered and said, I will dictate and you will write. Prime Minister Sima immediately took out a pen and paper. His Majesty solemnly said, The matters of our East Phoenix Kingdom have nothing to do with your Star Sun Kingdom. Scram as far away as you can. Prime Minister Sima, Your Majesty, this is the national letter. Is it really all right to be so rude? Prime Minister Sima saw that their Majesty was determined to be like this. As long as he embellished He Xinjia's words, he would be refined. However, the main idea was still the same as what Yun Chujo had said. Yun Chujo looked at the national letter that Prime Minister Sima had embellished, took out the jade seal and stamped it, then, she said, In a while, send this national letter to the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom and tell him to get lost. In addition, have Crown Prince Yun lead an army of 100,000 soldiers to stand guard at the border. If the Star Sun Kingdom dares to cross the border, kill them without mercy. Although Prime Minister Sima felt that their Majesty's swift and decisive manner was quite bold, he said, Your Majesty, the Star Sun Kingdom's national strength is obviously stronger than our East Phoenix Kingdom. If we really shed all pretense of cordiality, we might not have a chance of winning. Chapter 3495 was really pitiful. Yun Chujo said indifferently, When we were at war with the Jingmu Kingdom back then, we had even less chance of winning. Didn't I still sit on the throne? So, what's there to be afraid of? Send me the information you've gathered on the Star Sun Kingdom. I reckon that the war will start soon. It's been a long time since we've fought a war. I'm really looking forward to it. Prime Minister Sima was speechless when he saw Yun Chujia's eager expression. However, when he thought about it, although their East Phoenix Kingdom was slightly weaker than the Star Sun Kingdom, they still had their evil emperor. What empty city stratagems? What traps? They would torture him to death. After giving himself a hint, Prime Minister Sima left in high spirits. When Yun Chujo saw that Prime Minister Sima had left, she smiled and looked at a certain person with an indifferent expression. Baby, let's go. Little sister will bring you around the imperial palace. Di Baiming said coldly, This venerable one wants to cultivate. This venerable one also advises you. If you have time, why don't you think of a countermeasure? Don't waste your time on useless things. Yun Chujo looked at the cute-looking person and said such a big reason. She could not help but reach out her evil claws to hold the little bun's face, and then kissed him on the face. The cold face of the one was suddenly filled with anger. Little Jiao, if you continue to make trouble, don't blame me for being impolite. Impolite? How do you want to be impolite? Hei Xinjiu looked unscrupulous and even used her hand to poke the belly of the one. If eyes could hurt people, Hei Xinjiu would have been pierced into a sieve by the one. Seeing that a certain someone was about to faint from anger, Hei Xinjiu finally realized her conscience and stopped teasing a certain someone. She said with a smile, I'm just teasing you. Your body is weak, it'll bring you to your room to rest. Seeing that Yun Chujiu finally stopped teasing him, Di Baiming's expression eased up a little. Fortunately, this little rascal still knew how to restrain himself. A certain someone was clearly relieved too early. He soon learned that a little pervert who could snatch food from a devilish child was capable of doing anything. Baby, come here and massage little Missy's shoulders. Baby, come here and massage little Missy's legs. Baby, come here and peel little Missy's shrimp shells. A certain someone naturally wouldn't agree at first, but Hei Xinjiu said with a fake smile, Baby, if you don't do what little Missy says, little Missy will kiss you. A certain lord stared at Yun Chujiu for a long time, but he still began to serve Hei Xinjiu with a cold face. When Prime Minister Sima came to deliver the documents of the Star Sun Kingdom, he saw the scene in front of him and could not help but twitch the corner of his eyes. Your Majesty, you are your own mother. Is it really good for you to torture your own son like this? Prime Minister Sima could not help but advise tactfully, Your Majesty, the Crown Prince is still young. Let the palace maids do the work. As soon as he said that, a certain someone who was peeling the shell of a prawn for Hei Xinjiu immediately pinched the prawn in his hand into a prawn meatball and stared at Prime Minister Sima with a gloomy face. Ahem, Prime Minister Sima, didn't I tell you before? He is really not my son. You can call him in the future, Hei Xinjiu, who was useless at naming, could not come up with a suitable title after a long time. In the end, Prime Minister Sima said hesitantly, why don't we address him as Young Royal Highness first? After you give him a title, well just add a title to it. Hei Xinjiu nodded, alright, well do as you say. This fellow did not know that Prime Minister Sima sympathized with her in his heart. It was really not easy for His Majesty. He could not even acknowledge his own son. This was the saddest thing in the world. How pitiful. Chapter 3496, Let Empress Di come over. After Prime Minister Sima left with a heavy face, Hei Xinjiu glanced at a certain person who was peeling the shell of a shrimp and said slyly, Son. Peel it well. After saying that, the guy jumped hundreds of feet away, afraid that Di Baiming would punish her. She didn't expect Di Baiming to only look at her deeply and then continue peeling the shell of the shrimp expressionlessly. Hei Xinjiu saw that Di Baiming did not pay attention to her and felt that it was meaningless. She went back to her seat and ate the shrimp. After eating a few prawns, Hei Xinjiu reached out her evil claws and poked a certain someone's small face. The certain someone only frowned and did not say anything. A certain Jiao was definitely someone who would take advantage of others. When she saw that Di Baiming did not say anything, she continued poking and poking. She even squeezed the certain someone's small face into a bun shape. A certain Jiao still did not say anything. She did not even avoid Hei Xinjiu's demonic claws. She only looked at Hei Xinjiu coldly. Hei Xinjiu instantly felt goosebumps when she was looked at. However, this guy comforted himself. The pretty boy was no match for her now. Moreover, he had become a little bean. What was there to be afraid of? If you don't take advantage of a bastard, it would be such a waste to waste such a good opportunity. Therefore, this guy continued to torture a certain someone even more. If it wasn't for the fact that a certain someone was now a little bean, this guy might have made a certain someone dance, strip, and dance. This guy even boasted shamelessly to a certain someone and said, Baby, your emotions and desires have been sealed anyway, so you shouldn't know what it means to be angry, right? In that case, you won't take revenge on me in the future, right? A certain honored warrior didn't even look at her and sneered in his heart. He had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires, but it didn't mean that he was a dead person. Very good. In a few more days, he would be able to recover as before, and he wasn't afraid of settling accounts. On this morning, Prime Minister Sima ran over in a panic. Your Majesty, something bad has happened. The Star Sun Kingdom had joined forces with the Ghost Gold Kingdom and the Winged Fire Kingdom to form an alliance army of 3 countries to attack our East Phoenix Kingdom. Now, the army had already reached the border. The Sun Nation has sent a letter stating that if you don't give up the throne, they will start a war. Yun Chujia's heart sank when she heard this. If it was just the Sun Nation alone, she would not be afraid. However, now that the 3 second-class nations had joined forces, she had no chance of winning at all. Prime Minister Sima sighed at the side. Why did their Majesty have so many disasters? As soon as she became the female emperor of the East Phoenix Kingdom, the 3 southern dragon kingdoms started to cause trouble. Soon after, the Jingmu Kingdom started to stir up trouble again. Now, the 3 Star Sun Kingdoms wanted to force her to abdicate. This time, there was really no room for negotiation. Yun Chuzhou thought for a moment and said, you should first stabilize the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom and delay it for a few days. Prime Minister Sima nodded and then said tentatively, Your Majesty, only the Empress can help you now. Why don't you send a message to the Empress and ask her to come over? Empress D. The face of a certain someone who was peeling melon seeds for He Xinjiu suddenly turned gloomy. He Xinjiu coughed dryly and said, he has something to do, so he might not be able to come here in time. Prime Minister Sima glanced at a certain someone and gritted his teeth. Your Majesty, although there are some things that I shouldn't say, you and Empress D already have a son. What's the point of separating the 2 of you? If you didn't save her, that would be too much. What could be more important than the both of you? Kacha. The coffee table instantly turned into a pile of broken pieces. Prime Minister Sima couldn't help but shiver. Why did he suddenly feel a little cold? Chapter 3497, The Trash of Trash. He Xinjiu coughed dryly. You can go back first. I'll think about it again. Prime Minister Sima had no choice but to leave with a sigh. He lamented in his heart. His Majesty had a strong enemy outside the palace and a son inside that he could not acknowledge. It was not easy for him to find a woman who was heartless. He Xinjiu looked at a certain someone with a cold expression and then at the broken pieces on the ground. She sighed. Why are you throwing a tantrum? You even overturned my melon seeds. Di Baiming frowned and said, you still have the mood to care about melon seeds now? What do you plan to do? Yun Chuzhou spread her hands and said, I don't know what to do either. Anyway, I won't give up the position of female emperor. There will be a way. Seeing her heartless look, Di Baiming's face became even darker. He frowned and said, I asked Xue Wuji and Enfeng to help you. Although they are a little useless, they are still much stronger than you. Yun Chuzhou, if even a useless person was much stronger than her, then wouldn't she be a useless person among useless people? However, it had been a long time since he had seen Xue Wuji and Enfeng. It would be nice to meet them. Therefore, He Xinjiu said happily, good, good. I want to meet Brother Wuji and the little lunatic. Di Baiming felt a little uncomfortable when he saw Yun Chujia's happy look. However, he could not tell what the reason was. He sent a message to Xue Wuji and Enfeng with a gloomy face. Yun Chuzhou naturally would not just sit around and wait. She looked through the information she had gathered on the 3 kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom a few times, but the information she had was really limited. After a day, Prime Minister Sima came again in a hurry. Your Majesty, the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom said that if we don't give him a reply today, he will leave tomorrow morning. Take it that we have rejected their request. Yun Chuzhou frowned. It seemed that the 3 kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom were determined to start a war. They must have taken a fancy to this piece of fat meat from the East Phoenix Kingdom and wanted to eat it. Prime Minister Sima saw that Yun Chuzhou didn't say anything and asked tentatively, "Your Majesty, has the Empress replied to you?" A certain honored warrior couldn't bear it anymore and said coldly, "Prime Minister Sima, it's young Master D or the Emperor. It's not some damn Empress D." Prime Minister Sima was stunned at first, then he said earnestly, "Young Royal Highness, your father is His Majesty's man, so he is naturally his mother. Calling him young Master D is really a little strange." Yun Chuzhou saw that Di Baiming's expression was so cold that it was about to freeze. She quickly held back her laughter and said, "Prime Minister Sima, this emperor will emphasize to you once again that you must call him young Master D in the future. Also, this baby is really not my son. Yes, this old subject will remember it. This old subject will not address you wrongly in the future." "Then, what did young Master D reply to your Majesty?" Prime Minister Sima said respectfully. However, he sighed in his heart. This was already called a baby, what else could it be but a son? Their Majesty was simply the most pitiful woman in the world. Yun Chuzhou smiled and said, "I'm afraid he won't be able to make it in time. Get his 2 subordinates to come over and help me. They will be able to arrive in a few days." Prime Minister Sima heard Yun Chuzhou say this. He could not help but feel a little disappointed. "Your Majesty, even if young Master D comes over personally, he might not have a chance of winning. He only sent 2 subordinates over, I'm afraid it won't be of much use. Do you have any other countermeasures?" Yun Chuzhou shook her head. "For the time being, there isn't any good solution. Do your best to stabilize the envoy of the Star Sun Kingdom. If it really doesn't work, add some ingredients to his dishes at night. He won't be able to leave even if he wants to, such as laxatives." Chapter 3498, Besieging the Way to Save the Zhao. Prime Minister Sima could not believe his own ears. Giving laxatives to the emissaries of other countries? "Your Majesty, don't you think that this is a little immoral?" Prime Minister Sima glanced at Yun Chuzhou. Seeing that she did not look like she was joking, he could only nod his head. In his heart, he thought that he should think of other ways to persuade the emissaries of the Star Sun Kingdom. If it really did not work, he would use the method that His Majesty had suggested. If he did this, it would be the biggest stain in his life. At this moment, the voice transmission talisman in Yun Chuzhou's storage ring started to vibrate one after another. Yun Chuzhou took it out and took a look. It was sent by Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2. Yun Chuzhou could not help but curl her lips. She thought that these 3 old fellows were very calm, but she did not expect that they could not hold it in anymore. The content of the voice transmission talismans of Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 was basically the same. They were asking if the situation was serious and if she had any good strategies to solve it. Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 were now in the same boat as Yun Chuzhou. If Yun Chuzhou was forced to step down, they would not be able to recover either. Naturally, they were extremely concerned. Yun Chuzhou casually explained the current situation. Then, she asked the 3 of them to gather the army and prepare to start a war. Although Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 were terrified, they didn't dare to ask any further. This was because they knew that if they offended Empress Zhou, they might not be able to hold on to their throne before the Sun Nation invaded. Yun Chuzhou put down the 3 people's voice transmission talismans, but her heart was moved. Back then, the 3 nations had joined forces to take care of the East Phoenix Kingdom, and she had used a counterplot to destroy the 3 nations. Could she do the same this time? He Xinjiu first let Prime Minister Sima go down, and then cupped her chin as she pondered. After thinking about it, she felt that it was basically impossible. The reason why the counterplot had succeeded back then was mainly because of her deep understanding of the situation of the various countries, and she had spies. However, she knew very little about the 3 countries of the Star Sun country, so the counterplot clearly had no effect. Di Baiming saw that Yun Chuzhou's brows were tightly knitted, and a sense of helplessness welled up in his heart. If his cold poison had not relapsed, he could completely help the little rascal kill the emperors of the three countries, and the three countries would definitely fall into internal strife. This would temporarily alleviate the crisis of the East Phoenix Kingdom. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across Di Baiming's eyes. He thought of the two bones that he had already found. If she was unable to survive this crisis, he could only take the risk in an emergency. Just as Di Baiming was thinking about it, he heard Yun Chuzhou laughing sinisterly. That laughter was exactly the same as every time she tormented him. Di Baiming subconsciously took a few steps back. Did she think of a new trick to torture him again? Hei Xinjiu reached out her claws and held a certain deity's little face. She kissed it a few times and then said excitedly, "Baby, I've thought of a good idea." Di Baiming was too lazy to correct her. He quickly asked, "What good idea have you thought of?" Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, "Surround Wei and save Zhao." Di Baiming had heard Hei Xinjiu mention the contents of the 36 strategies in the past, so he knew what it meant to surround Wei and save Zhao. His eyes flashed. "What do you want to do?" There are a total of 7 second-grade countries under the Jun Tian Kingdom. Currently, the Star Sun Kingdom, the Ghost Gold Kingdom, and the Winged Fire Kingdom have joined forces. As for the Willow Earth Kingdom, the Zhangyu Kingdom, and the Zhenshui Kingdom, they are not participating in the war because these three countries are not connected to the East Phoenix Kingdom. Even if they participate in the war, they will not get any benefits. If I can convince those three countries to stab the Star Sun Kingdom in the back, not only can I solve the current predicament, but I can also kill the Star Sun Kingdom. If I'm lucky, I can also take out the Ghost Gold Kingdom and the Winged Fire Kingdom. Ha ha ha, I'm so smart. Chapter 3499, Let's have a group battle. Di Baiming's eyes flashed with admiration. Although the little rascal's spiritual power was a little useless, his brain was still very useful. However, Di Baiming still poured cold water on Hei Xinjiu, who was so excited that she almost jumped up. Your method is naturally not bad, but how are you going to convince the other three countries? Moreover, time is tight now. Before you can convince the other three countries, I'm afraid that the armies of the three countries from the Star Sun country will attack. Yun Chuzhou was immediately awakened. That's right, she did not have the voice transmission talisman of the three kings. If she wanted to communicate with them, she could only send a letter. Most importantly, if she wanted to go to the three kingdoms, she would have to pass through the three kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom. They would definitely not let the envoys of the East Phoenix Kingdom go over. Even if they could think of a way to go over, it would waste a lot of time. By then, it would be too late. While Hei Xinjiu was frowning, Di Baiming said indifferently, "Those two trash might be able to help." Yun Chuzhou was stunned at first, then she hugged Di Baiming and kissed him. "Baby, I love you so much. You are so smart. You are indeed my man. You are almost as smart as me." A certain lord was embarrassed and angry. "Stop fooling around. Why don't you think about what to do?" Hei Xinjiu finally let go of her evil claws, then took out a piece of paper and pen to write a national letter. She felt that the wording was a bit unrefined, so she had to call Prime Minister Sima back. When Prime Minister Sima arrived, Yun Chuzhou told him about her plan. Prime Minister Sima was stunned for a while, then, he said with a face full of admiration, "Your Majesty, you are really a man of great talent and great strategy. It is the good fortune of the people of East Phoenix country to have a majesty like you. No, it is the good fortune of everyone in Towering Sky Continent." Hei Xinjiu was so proud that she almost could not control how many letters she sent. She managed to suppress the pride in her heart with great difficulty and said indifferently, "You are flattering me. I am only a little smarter than the average person. Here, this is the national letter that I have drafted. You can polish it." Prime Minister Sima took the national letter that Hei Xinjiu handed over. When he saw the dog-like words on it, the corner of his mouth twitched. As expected, no one was perfect. The words of their majesty were really difficult to explain in one word. Prime Minister Sima polished the national letter that Yun Chuzhou had drafted. In fact, it was nothing more than plain English: Your Majesty of a certain country, you also know that the 3 bastards of the Star Sun country are currently besieging our East Phoenix country. If our East Phoenix country is divided by them, then their strength will definitely be stronger than yours. In that case, it's inevitable that they will have designs on your 3 kingdoms in the future. In addition, even if your 3 kingdoms join their camp now, let's not talk about whether they agree or not. Even if they agree, you and our East Phoenix kingdom are not close to each other, so you won't get any benefits. Now, an opportunity that can not only show your kingdom's pleasure in helping others, but also bring great benefits has arrived. That was, our East Phoenix country would delay the allied forces of the 3 countries, while your 3 countries would stab the Star Sun country in the back. They would definitely be able to take down the Star Sun country very quickly. When the time came, our 4 countries would join forces and annihilate the Ghost Gold country, and the Winged Fire country would be a piece of cake. When the time came, our 4 countries would divide the territory of the Star Sun country and the 3 countries equally. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Such a good opportunity was simply a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Therefore, we must not miss out on this opportunity. This opportunity is now or never. Quickly agree to our East Phoenix Kingdom's proposal. Let's have a team battle. Chapter 3500 was really fierce. Prime Minister Sima was completely in awe of their emperor's eloquence. If he were the emperor of the 3 kingdoms, he would definitely raise his hands and feet to express his approval. If such a good opportunity was wasted, it would be simply intolerable to the heavens. Yun Chuzhou took over Prime Minister Sima's embellished national letter and took a look. She curled her lips and said, "Prime Minister Sima, you are quite talented. It's just that your handwriting is a little ugly." "Prime Minister Sima, don't you feel guilty saying that? His handwriting is ugly. It's simply 10,000 times better than your handwriting." Yun Chuzhou immediately told Shui Wuji the contents of the letter and asked him to forge 3 letters. As for the jade seal, he could just get a large radish to carve it. Shui Wuji and Enfeng immediately changed their route and went straight to the Willow country. Yun Chuzhou thought for a moment. Even if Shui Wuji and Enfeng split up, the 3 countries would not immediately respond. It would take them a few days, hence, the most important thing now was to stop the 3 countries' alliance army from invading. Yun Chuzhou thought of this and immediately asked Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 to lead the army to the border. She also brought Di Baiming and Prime Minister Sima to the border. At this moment, the emissary of the Sun Nation who almost died in the latrine had already returned to the Sun Nation. The allied forces of the Sun Nation had also gathered and were ready to start a war at any time. When Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 saw He Xinjiu, their gazes were immediately attracted by the 3 to 4-year-old boy she was holding. Oh my, after not seeing each other for a few days, this Empress Zephyr had given birth to an illegitimate child? This girl was really fierce. A certain someone's eyes darkened. He swore to the heavens that he would never take that rejuvenation pill again, definitely not. He Xinjiu did not tell Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 about joining forces with the 3 kingdoms of the Willow country. This matter was of great importance, so she naturally had to be more cautious. Therefore, Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 had worried looks on their faces. They felt that they were most likely going to be finished this time. However, they still felt a little lucky in their hearts. Perhaps that young Master Di of the female Emperor of Fenghua would come over to help. After all, his wife and son were here. They could not just leave them be, right? With that great weapon, they might still have some hope of victory. Yun Chuzhou did not have the time to ponder over the thoughts of Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2. She immediately brought her men to check out the terrain of the border. There was neither a valley as a place to set up ambushes nor a formation that prohibited flying. It could be said that if the alliance army of the 3 countries wanted to attack, there would be no obstruction at all. It was not realistic to dig a trap. After all, the border stretched for tens of miles, and there was no way to complete the trap in a short period of time. He Xinjiu took out the map and looked at it. Then, her gaze fell on a winding river. At this moment, the atmosphere in the tent of the alliance army of the three countries was very warm. The generals felt that the East Phoenix country was simply not able to withstand a single blow, and it would not take long to take it down. The Star Sun country was the initiator country, and they had even sent their crown prince Xing Zhenyuan over to supervise the battle. Therefore, everyone made Xing Zhenyuan the commander of the alliance army of the three countries. Xing Zhenyuan said with slight disdain, "The border of the East Phoenix country has no natural dangers to defend, and there are no large-scale formations. Once the war starts, the alliance army of the three countries will definitely be unstoppable, and we will take down the East Phoenix country in one fell swoop." Ghost Gold Kingdom's 7th Prince Jean Halkue agreed, "That's right. The East Phoenix Kingdom has been in turmoil for a period of time. Not to mention our three countries' alliance army, even if we take out any country, they wouldn't be a match for us." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.